There is a phrase that appears in Himalayan rescue reports more often than the climbing industry wants you to know. Tank was found at sufficient pressure. It means the dead climber didn't run out of oxygen. It means the bottle on his back was still working when his body stopped. The regulator wasn't broken. The mask was on his face. The gauge had supply left. And he died anyway. This is one of the strangest facts about Everest, and it is one of the least talked about. The mountain's reputation is built on the idea that oxygen is the line between life and death, that if you have it, you live, and if you don't, you don't. The entire commercial industry charging climbers $70,000 a head depends on this idea being true, and it isn't. The number of Everest fatalities recovered with usable oxygen still in the bottle is not a footnote, it is a category. It shows up in the autopsies, the gear inventories, and the after-action reports of every major expedition company that has lost a client above 8,000 meters. The dead are not running out. They are dying with supply on their backs. Stay with me, because over the next 15 minutes I'm going to walk you through the 4 specific ways a full oxygen tank kills the person carrying it. Not theoretical ways. Ways that are documented in equipment recalls, in published medical research, and in the recovered gear of climbers who didn't come home. By the end, you'll understand why the most experienced guides on the mountain treat a full tank. Not as a guarantee, but as a suggestion. The mountain is free to ignore. If you're new here, this channel covers what actually kills people at altitude, not the dramatized version, the real one. Hit subscribe and the bell, because the next video gets even darker. Let's get into it. The first thing to understand is what a full oxygen tank actually is. It is not a guarantee of breathable oxygen. It is a guarantee of gas under pressure inside a metal cylinder. Those are not the same thing. A standard 3-liter Poisk bottle, the kind used on most commercial Everest expeditions, holds around 720 liters of oxygen at full pressure. At a flow rate of 2 liters per minute, the conservative climbing rate, that bottle gives you 6 hours. At 4 liters per minute, which is what guides recommend on summit day in cold conditions, that same full bottle gives you 3 hours. 3. A summit push from Camp 4 to the top and back takes most climbers anywhere from 12 to 18 hours. So when we say full tank, what we usually mean is one of 3 or 4 full tanks, which need to be staged correctly along the route, swapped out at exactly the right altitudes, and carried by Sherpas who themselves need oxygen, and who themselves are sometimes the ones who die. The math is brutal, and it punishes climbers who don't understand it. People who plan for 2 liters per minute and end up breathing 4 because they're cold and exhausted run out at the worst possible moment, and the gauge they checked at the South Col that read full meant nothing once their actual consumption rate doubled. But this is the easy version of the problem. This is the version where the tank does eventually run dry. The harder version, the one in the rescue reports, is the version where the tank is still full and the climber is still dead. That requires 4 separate failure modes. Let me walk you through each of them. The regulator is the small mechanical valve that controls the flow of oxygen between the bottle and the mask. It is not glamorous. It is not photographed. It is the size of a fist and weighs almost nothing. And it is the single most important piece of equipment on a summit attempt, because if it fails, the oxygen behind it might as well not exist. A full tank with a broken regulator delivers exactly 0 liters per minute to the climber's lungs. The pressure gauge can read 100%, and the climber can suffocate 10 centimeters away from a working oxygen supply. This is not theoretical. In May of 2018, a major commercial expedition company on the north side of Everest experienced multiple simultaneous regulator failures, a combination of high humidity and a manufacturing defect in the O-ring inside the regulator caused units to fail above 8,000 meters, releasing the oxygen into the atmosphere instead of into the mask. The manufacturer issued a recall. Roughly 25 out of 500 to 1,000 regulators failed, a 4 to 5% failure rate, on Everest, at altitude, with no spare in many cases. Alan Arnett. Alan Arnett. It happened again in 2019. It happened in 2022, when one expedition leader reported that 10 of his 39 oxygen regulators failed within 3 minutes of each other at 8,500 meters. 10 in 3 minutes. The team only survived because they had spares and Sherpas willing to share. Climbers without that redundancy, solo summiters, smaller expeditions, anyone whose gear bag was already at Camp 4 when the failure happened higher up, those climbers do not survive a regulator failure. They die with full tanks on their backs. The rescue team finds the bottle at sufficient pressure. The autopsy finds hypoxia. The conclusion is what every conclusion is on Everest. Cause of death, altitude, outside online. The second failure mode is the mask. The mask is the rubber and silicone interface that fits over the climber's mouth and nose and delivers oxygen from the regulator into the lungs. It is also a meticulously poor fit for the conditions on Everest. The temperature on summit day can hit -40°C. The climber is exhaling moist, warm air into a frigid environment several hundred times an hour. That moisture freezes inside the mask. It freezes inside the rubber tubing. It freezes the one-way valve that prevents the climber from re-inhaling his own exhaled carbon dioxide. When the valve freezes shut, the mask stops delivering oxygen, even if the bottle is full and the regulator works. Climbers who know about this problem squeeze the rubber components of the mask every 30 minutes during the climb to break up the ice. Climbers who don't know, or who are too hypoxic to remember, end up breathing mostly carbon dioxide from a malfunctioning mask, while a perfectly good oxygen bottle hisses uselessly into the cold. The mask can also shift. It can deform in high wind. It can be pulled aside accidentally when the climber wipes his goggles, and then refit improperly without the climber noticing. Pulse oximetry studies done on Everest expeditions have found that mask shifts are detectable in real time as a sudden drop in blood oxygen saturation, even when the regulator and bottle are working perfectly. The cylinder is delivering oxygen. The oxygen is going past the climber's face into the open air. The climber is hypoxic in the middle of his own functioning oxygen supply. This is one of the cleanest examples of the full tank paradox. The equipment works. The system works. One physical interface, a piece of rubber against a frozen face, has slipped a centimeter, and a centimeter at 29,000 feet is the line between getting home and not. Because it is not a malfunction. It is a decision. And the decision is rational. And it is wrong. And it kills a specific type of person almost every season. When a climber realizes he is going to be on the mountain longer than planned, because the line is, because someone above him is in trouble, because the wind has picked up, because he is tired, he does something that seems intelligent at the moment. He turns down the regulator. He drops his flow rate from 4 liters per minute to 2. From 2 to 1, he is rationing. He is buying himself more hours of supply. What he does not understand, because his hypoxic brain cannot do this math, is that the relationship between flow rate and survival is not linear. 2 liters per minute is not half as good as 4. At 29,000 feet, with the body working at sustained exertion, the difference between 4 liters and 2 liters is not the difference between fast and... It is the difference between mild hypoxia and severe hypoxia. It is the difference between being able to descend and being unable to. The climber rationing his oxygen to survive the climb is, in real time, removing his own ability to survive the climb. His tank now lasts longer. He, however, does not. This is documented in the medical literature. Studies of Everest mortality have specifically identified acute hypoxia during descent, caused by the exhaustion or undersupply of supplemental oxygen, as a major contributor to fatal high-altitude cerebral edema. The climbers who die this way do not run out. They throttle down. The bottle is still flowing. The flow is no longer enough. The brain swells. The decisions get worse. And the climber sits down to rest somewhere and never gets up. PubMed Central. When the rescue team reaches the body, they find the regulator on a low setting. They find the gauge with hours of supply left. They write, "Tank was found at sufficient pressure" in the report. And the lesson that a low flow rate at altitude is not conservation, it is suicide, never makes it onto a single brochure. The fourth failure mode is the deepest one and the hardest to accept. Supplemental oxygen does not solve the problem of altitude. It softens it. The tank does not give the climber sea-level air. Even at 4 liters per minute on the summit, the partial pressure of oxygen in the climber's blood is roughly equivalent to standing at the top of a 6,000-meter peak without oxygen. The climber is still hypoxic, still dying, just morely, still degrading cognitively, still losing fine motor control, still accumulating the cellular damage that becomes high-altitude cerebral and pulmonary edema. And here is the cruel part. The mask makes him feel like he is fine. The subjective experience of breathing supplemental oxygen at altitude is a sense of relief, a sense of recovery, a sense that the worst is over. None of those feelings are accurate. The climber feels 80% normal while his blood gas levels are still in the range where pilots at the same effective altitude lose consciousness within minutes. The mask is doing 2 things at once. It is keeping him alive, and it is lying to him about how alive he actually is. He thinks he has more margin than he does. He pushes harder than he should. He stays higher longer than he can survive. And by the time the symptoms break through the false comfort the mask is providing, he is too far gone for the bottle to save him, even if the bottle is full. This is the paradox at the center of every supplemental oxygen death on Everest. The tank is working. The tank is not enough. The tank is also the reason he believed it would be. You understand something most climbers don't internalize until it's too late. Hit the like button right now. It is the single biggest signal to YouTube to push this video to the next person about to spend their savings on an Everest permit. And it genuinely is the difference between this channel reaching 10,000 people or 100,000. And in the comments, I want to know if you had to design a